Hey folks, welcome back to the Portable Gamer. Welcome back to Train Sim World, and this is the Great Western Railway DLC. It's tricky to say. It sounds easy, but it's tricky to say. Great Western Railway DLC. And we are in the high-speed service. We're leaving Paddington. It's a little bit before 8 a.m. Back the speed down a little bit here. And I wanted to do Train Sim World. We haven't done Train Sim World on a Wednesday for quite a while. And I wanted to slow it down just a little bit. I wanted to do Train Sim World, and there's a kind of a specific reason why. So I don't know if you know, so there's Train Sim World and there's Train Simulator. Both of them are made by Dovetail. And Train Simulator has been around for a while. Train Simulator was released, I believe, in 2008, and it was the successor to Railworks, and that was released in like 2003, maybe 2002, and that was the successor. That was made by Kuju, which is the company that originally worked with Microsoft to develop Microsoft Train Simulator, which was released in 2001, I want to say. So it's like I keep believing in Train Simulator. And it's not a bad game, but it's different. And it looks like a game that's 20 years old. I guess that's the nicest way to say it. And what's weird is, are my brakes off? I feel like my brakes are on. Give me some juice, man. Give me some juice. Let's pick up the pace a little. So it's an interesting kind of sim, and I saw Train Simulator 2019 had dropped the other day, October 11th, and it was now 64-bit. And I thought, okay, let's give it a try. So I bought it, and it comes with, you can get various packs. There's like a base pack, and then you can get the UK pack. You can get there we go. You can get the UK pack, you can get the US pack, you can get the Germany pack. So I got the Germany pack because I've got several UK railways in Train Sim World, right? So I went ahead and got the game, I got it installed, and sure enough, man, it looks exactly like it has all these years. And I guess the appeal of the game, I guess the reason that people are so into it is all the DLC, and there's hundreds and hundreds of DLC items. So I feel like the way people are looking at it is, keep supporting this game, because some people have spent thousands of dollars on DLC. And I guess I get that, but not entirely. Like, it's tricky sometimes to try to figure out, man, why do we keep losing our mojo here? I feel like we're triggering auto braking or something. We keep slowing down. Anyway, I went ahead and downloaded it, and it looks like a 20-year-old game. It does not look anything like Train Sim World. It's very blocky. The graphics are very it's just, and 64-bit, I don't know what they did, but with the graphics on high, not ultra, we were at like 12 to 15 FPS leaving the station. And I tried a couple of routes, I tried some different graphic settings, but I realized at a certain point, like, I can't jack the graphic settings enough to alter like the fundamental textures of the game. Like, it's just not gonna happen. And I wasn't mad or anything, but like, this is a non-starter. This is not gonna work. So I went ahead and uninstalled it, got my refund. Thank you, Steam. But it got me thinking about games, and it got me thinking about gaming, and it got me thinking about like where our standards are as gamers. And I don't know. I mean, on something like Train Sim World that we're in right now, or Train Simulator, or ETS or ATS, or even Farm Sim, it's like you can't win at those games. You can't be the best at those games. You just play them and have fun. And you can be better at them, I guess, but you can't really win at them. There's no There's no like championship title for truck sim. And I know people have come up with some different scenarios and different ways to make it competitive. But to me, it's just, I mean, those aren't competitive games. Those are games where you're competing with yourself. And the same with farm sim, they have competitions, bale stacking and things like that. And it's like, yeah, man, I just want to be as realistic and smooth and zen a farmer as I can be. I don't want to compete against anybody. I don't know that there's any way you really can compete other than, like I said, getting into some sort of contrived scenarios where you make the game a competition, even though it's really not meant to be. And then I also think about racing sim. And I have a lot of race sims, and I love race sims. And I was really thinking about this yesterday. I was really like trying to sort this out and make it make sense in my head. And what I got to thinking about was, like, I don't know how it is where you are, but in the U.S., high school athletes and junior high school athletes, like, that's when athletes begin thinking about not necessarily going professional, but they begin thinking, you know what, I might be able to go to college for free if I get a scholarship, an athletic scholarship, right? So in high school, if you're a standout athlete, you're already eyeing up colleges. And I mean, there are kids in the United States where their parents will move to another place. They'll move to another school district so that their kid can be part of a specific or high-end program, right? That will increase the odds of them getting into a college. So let's say you're a star in high school, you're a standout, and you get to college. Well, everybody on your team was a standout. Everybody on your team was a star. And now suddenly you went from being the star to just trying to hang on, trying to not get relegated. And if by some miracle, because the odds are really stacked against you, but if by some miracle you make it to the pros, same thing. You were an absolute superstar in college. Everybody talked about you. You were known nationally. And you get to the pros and it's like, oh, I might not be able to do this. And that happens all the time. Like, at least a couple of times a year, there is some story about, a Heisman Trophy winner or somebody who was going to be right, and they make it to the pros and they just can't cut it. They can't do it. So it got me thinking about racing sims, and I've been into race sims for 20 years. I love race sim. And like, I game more than anybody that I know in real life. Like, among me and my friends, I game more than anybody in that group, right? And when we get together and race fake race cars, when we sim race together, and you know how you do it. You just pass the controller around and do a couple laps. You do 2 laps, you do an out lap and a hot lap. Okay, that's my time. And you give it to the next person and they try to beat it. And, we know all these tracks so well that, we try to stay away from the Nordschleife because it's such a long lap. But, we can hop on Suzuka, we can hop on Laguna Seca, or Sonoma, Sears Point, whatever they're calling it this week, Infineon. We know those tracks. We've been racing them in sim games for 20 years. So we know those tracks, and we can trade the controller around, and we can take turns running hot laps. Well, I always run the hottest lap, and it's probably because I game more than any of my friends. But the point of all this is, when I get into iRacing, that's a whole different story. And there's several factors here. None of these things are excuses, they're just facts. So one fact is, I'm not a kid. I'm not 20 years old, and I don't have the reflexes of a 20-year-old kid. I also don't have a pro race rig. I've got a nice Thrustmaster TMX wheel, but that's not a pro wheel. I don't have a full game chair and a butt kicker and a motion rig and everything else that people that compete at the highest levels have. I don't have the time to practice for 5 or 6 hours a day on one track for one race. And then on top of everything else, I'm just not an alien. And that's one of those things where, again, it's not an excuse, it's just a fact. Like, the people that are competing at the highest levels, they have all of those things. They have the rig, they have their youth, their age, right? They've got the reflexes, they've got the time to practice, and there are still aliens in that group that all things being equal, with everybody having all those, I don't want to call them advantages, but you know what I mean, with everybody having all that stuff that you need to be a semi-pro sim racer or a pro sim racer, there are still people in that group that are going to rise above. They're just aliens. They're just freaks. They were built to race cars, real or sim. So it's weird for me to think about, the fact that I'm only ever going to race for fun. Like, I will never be able to race competitively in iRacing. And I understand that with the iRating system and with the license classes, I get that. I get that it's designed to bring people together so that no matter what level you race at, you can find good races and be competitive, assuming you race clean, right? Like, that's the main thing, is if you race clean and you race well, you will find good people to race with. They will pair you up with good people to race with, and you'll be competitive and you'll have a great time. But you're not necessarily going to be a champion, or at least not of the highest tiers. And that's fair. That's life, That's, like I was saying about athletes, you may have been the standout athlete at your high school, but when you get to college, you're just another person trying to stay on the team and not get cut. And if you can somehow make it through that process and make it to the pros, then same thing happens. So, moment. Got a yellow signal here. I want to see what this is all about. So you get what I'm saying. And it's not a bitter pill or anything. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. And I'm okay with that, as long as I can have fun. But I guess what I'm also saying is, as into gaming as I am, it still blows my mind to begin to be immersed in, I guess, is that a good word? Yeah. To begin to be immersed in a community where, I game every day and it's a huge part of my life. And then I get involved in this community, I get around these people, and I realize, I might not quite be a hack, but there's some people that take it well serious, way more seriously than I take it. And that's kind of humbling, and it's weird to realize that as I am to my circle of friends when it comes to gaming, these people that I'm meeting now and interacting with now, that's how they are. They're just so deadly serious about gaming. And what really brought it home was I found a comparison online of all the Gran Turismo games starting from 1997. And I remember that first Gran Turismo game. And I remember playing it with my friends and us thinking, if you sort of squint your eyes a little bit, it almost looks like you're watching TV coverage, right? And you look at it now and it's like, what, were we high or something? Well, we sort of were, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, in comparison, 20 years on, 21 years on, it looks like a joke. It's really a different kind of game than what we're playing now, what we're used to. And it was early days, and we've evolved since then. But there was also a comparison of Gran Turismo Sport, which is Gran Turismo 7, and Forza 7. And this cat, man, he was talking about specular lighting on the trees and the different ways that each of those sims render trees and how that affects both the look of the trees and the render speed of the game. Okay. He was talking about, he got into the way that the individual cars are rendered, and he pulled apart individual cars. He went into the photo mode in both, and my man zoomed in on the windscreen sprayer. I'm not joking. He zoomed in on the windscreen sprayer on both of them, and he's like, well, in this sim, it's just a gray plastic triangle. And in this sim, you can actually see the diffuser nozzle and the aperture. In this sim, the door handle has a keyhole, but in this sim, it has a keyless fob, a wireless fob, which matches up with the interior that has the GPS. And because of that, then on the trunk has the GPS antenna. Like, the level of scrutiny that he was applying to these cars was amazing. And to the game itself, and to the grass, the textures, everything. And I think, man, I look at a game and I think, well, that looks good. That looks pretty good. I'd play that. Or I look at a game and I think, that doesn't really do it for me. But I'm not getting into the level of analyzing like individual lighting on individual leaves on individual trees. So it's really humbling for me to realize that I'm in the company of people that take gaming that seriously. And it's really kind of brought it home to me that no matter what it is that you do, there's always going to be somebody who does it better. And that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but it's definitely a thing. So it's made me more mindful of how I see video games, and it's made me more mindful of how I want to approach YouTube. And I think there's room, obviously there's room on YouTube for everybody. It doesn't matter how you do it. There's room on YouTube for you. Find my cursor here. There it is. I feel like my headlights aren't bright enough. Is it a little better? Maybe. There's plenty of room on YouTube for everybody, no doubt. But there is also, I guess, a respect that you need to show to people, or that I would want to show to people, that are like just orders of magnitude beyond what I could ever do in terms of how seriously they take this stuff. You know what I mean? So that really, seeing that video was kind of an eye-opener for me. And I won't say it made me feel like a grom, but it definitely has me reevaluating how I'm evaluating games. And when I was thinking about Train Simulator 2019, like, it's not for me. And I was trying to think, well, who is this game for? And when I say that, I'm not being an ass. Like, I'm really trying to think, who's into this game, and why do they keep releasing a new one every year? Not a new one, but an updated one. Why would they make this 64-bit? Who cares? It's an old game with awful graphics. Well, some people don't think so. Some people think it's pretty cool. So, what does that mean as far as how I'm feeling about my games? And, what do people think of the Sims that I play? And where do they land in the order of, like, what's good, what's bad? And to see it from both sides, and to realize there are people that were totally stoked about the release of Train Simulator 2019 in 64-bit, because that means they can use all their DLC for another year, or it's their favorite game ever, or they like it that way, they like that look, or any number of things. And that they would look at Train Sim World that I'm on, and feel the same way. Like, why would you want to play a game that has 4 DLC, or why would you want to, so I guess it's totally subjective. Sim gaming and gaming in general, it's just totally subjective. It's whatever you want it to be. It's whatever works for you and makes you happy. And at the same time, it is, there is kind of an overview. There are good games and bad games. There are games that run fast and games that run slow, and there are games that are bugged out, and there are games that just miss the mark. So I don't know, man. I'm super thrilled to be involved in gaming at all. I've been, since I was tiny, like, I'm serious, since I was 7 or 8 years old, I've been gaming, and I've been gaming on the PC side. And when I was a kid, I did some rudimentary game creation. And that's one of those things that, as you look back at your life and think about, how things could have gone differently. There was a time in my life, I think, where I was headed toward not IT, which is sort of where I ended up, but more engineering. And I look back on my life and I think, could I have been a game designer? Could I have been a game developer? And some things happened in my world. Not good. Not good things happened in my world, and I was pulled away from that track. And I did not become a game developer. But when I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating. When I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I was beginning to build games. And to come back around to it all these years later is, you never know where you're going to end up in this life. But like Candide says, wherever you end up, that must be the best place because you can't be anywhere else. But it is interesting and fascinating for me to realize that as enamored as I was with games when I was a kid, that never went away. There's several things that never went away for me in my life, like things that I was into when I was a kid, and people tell you, oh, you'll grow out of that, you'll lose interest in that. When I got my driver's license, I remember I was just like, driving was about the coolest thing that I had ever done in my life. And kids that I knew that were a couple years older than me that had been driving for a couple years, they're like, oh, you'll get sick of it. You'll get sick of driving people around. Everybody in your family now is going to want you to drop them off somewhere because they've been driving you around for 16 years. Now they're going to want you to drop them off or take them someplace. You have to pick people up at parties. You'll get bored with it. And here it is all these years later, and I never got bored of it. I love driving cars, sports cars, and motorcycles. Oh, never got sick of it. I never got sick of gaming, never, to this day, all these years later, and I never got sick of good food and traveling. So, there's some things like, I never got sick of foot rubs. Well, of course, why would you? Foot rubs are awesome. But you know what I mean. There's other things that are maybe a little bit more mundane, and you think, that you'll grow out of that. But then you never do. And I know there are some people that I know that have had to grow out of those things. They started a family, work, whatever, they own a business. They had to grow out of things that they used to love. I saw a friend of mine in Los Angeles a few years back. I was traveling. I was on my motorcycle, and I just ended up in LA. And I stopped by to see him, and he had a motorcycle when he was in college. And when he got married, his wife made him get rid of it, which is kind of a classic thing that happens. And to hear him talk about like how much he didn't want to ride anymore, and how much he had grown out of that, and how much he had moved on, and I thought, man, I don't know who you're trying to convince, like me or yourself, but you're not convincing either one of us, because you're obviously you're selling me a bill of goods here. Like I don't believe it. I don't believe what you're telling me. I think you miss it. I think you want to go buy one right now. I think you want to take mine out for a spin. So I think there's some things that we have to let go of. And as weird as my life has been, and as difficult and at times painful as my life has been, I've always sort of been able to do whatever I want. And gaming has been there with me through a lot of it. There have been times where I was away from gaming for a year or two for various reasons. Not because I was in prison, if that's what you're thinking. But for various reasons, I just wasn't able to game, or there were too many other things going on. Well, fantastic. All right, level 2. It's okay. See, that's a good example. Like, we've only driven 100 miles in this train as of right now, and I feel like when I started YouTubing, because I only play Train Sim World now essentially once a week for an hour, and even less than that because it's only once a week for an hour when a DLC comes out. I feel like we got through the scenarios on the Great Western Railway, and then we never really played it again. So I'd like to game more for fun again. Not that YouTube isn't fun, but I realize that I'm playing a lot of these Sims. The only time I'm playing these Sims is on YouTube. So it's something to think about. Anyway, I've had to step away from gaming for various periods of time in my life. And I always feel really good when I come back to it. I know the cliche of a gamer is like a certain type of person, and fortunately, that's not me. I work out, I train, I'm fit, and we're gonna make it. I think we're gonna make it. And I have a girlfriend, and I travel, I socialize. I know gamers have a bad rep sometimes as sort of shut-ins, or people that aren't super well adjusted. And fortunately, that doesn't apply to me. But I get where that stereotype is coming from. And I understand that people could look at it from a certain angle and be like, why are you so into something fake? It's not real. And I think about books, I think about movies, I think about people of my generation. Like when we were kids, Harry Potter was coming out. And a lot of people, like, they never let go of Harry Potter. I mean, people my age with kids are as into Harry Potter or Star Wars or a lot of other things that, it just, it's a huge part of our life. And nobody, like, if you're way into a series of books, not too into, you're gonna make it? We're just barely gonna make it. Barely. Whew. If you're way into a series of books, people don't give you a lot of crap about that because reading is a cool thing. It's, you know what I mean? Or if you're into film, if you really just like watching movies, maybe not. But if you're into film, then that's okay. But it seems like gaming doesn't get that same latitude. Gaming has some baggage. So I wouldn't say I get defensive about it, but I am maybe a little defensive about it. It's not something that people necessarily understand. And that's okay. That's cool. I don't need to necessarily be understood, but I don't know. These videos, my channel, the direction that it's going in, I do feel like it's becoming as much about gaming and about sort of life in general as it is about the game that we're playing at any given moment. That's cool. So let's get her stopped here. I feel like our caboose is hanging off the backside here. No, we good? No, we're well on the platform. Okay, so let's do this. Gives it to me? Fantastic. I'm going to hop out and do a screenshot. Unload passengers. We're going to have to do it this way because I can't remember where the button is. Right. So, let's do this. And we'll end it here. I think we've got a ways to go before the end of this scenario, but we're going to come out here and, yeah. How about right there? Right about there. There you go, folks. Thanks for stopping back to check out The Portable Gamer. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Train Sim World. This is the Great Western Railway DLC. And we'll see you next time. Take care now.